All right. Well, good afternoon. I wanted to give the people of the city an update on where we stand in response to the flood emergency. Since I updated you a week ago, a lot of things have happened. But the most important thing that's going to matter to all of us is getting the federal government to declare the situation a disaster area for Detroit, for Dearborn Heights, for Washtenaw County and Ypsilanti and the like. And the reason is this. In 2014, FEMA paid out more than $80 million for losses in that flood. The one this year is probably triple the size. It is going to be an enormous amount of money. And our residents and a lot of the other communities' residents suffered greatly. And so it is just critical that we get a presidential declaration of disaster relief and a commitment for individual reimbursement. Since I talked to you last, I went up and met with President Biden in Antrim County on Saturday, who, as he always was, is deeply concerned about the city of Detroit. And since that time, I've had phone calls from the White House, from FEMA, and the like, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night. I don't think anybody in D.C. took a 4th of July a weekend, and multiple Zoom calls with federal officials and the state of Michigan. Governor Whitmer's Homeland Security team is just doing an outstanding job. And I just left 20 FEMA staff members who are on site in the neighborhoods today. They're in the city of Detroit. They're also in Dearborn. They're also in Ypsilanti assessing the situation. And so we are working really hard to get a presidential declaration so that you can get reimbursement from your loss in this event. Let me tell you what we're doing right now, and then the question I'm asked at every single home I go to now is, what's next? And I'm going to answer the question, what's next? But let's start with this. We got to do 5 things right now. We got to keep moving the debris off the curbs. We've got to deal with standing water, which is still a health situation in too many homes. We've got to help people get the debris out of the basement. If you're seeing what's happening here, we'll go down a street, remove the debris, and 3 days later, it'll be filled up again, because people are doing this a bit at a time. We've got to help folks speed that up, because you can't clean and sanitize your basement until that debris is out of there. We've got to get the basements cleaned and sanitized. We cannot have that sewage residue there. We can't have mold start to set in. And that means we got to get our landlords to speed up their cleanup process for their renters, and we're going to start to get very serious with the landlords. And for our poorest and most vulnerable residents, we're going to send in city teams to help that sanitation process. So the folks who normally would end up being last in line, we're going to see if we can't make sure that they are first in line for this very important service. And then we got to push to get a presidential disaster declaration as quickly as we can so we can start the process of getting reimbursement back in to the wallets of the people who live here. So let me tell you where we stand today. I'll tell you what we're doing, and I'll tell you what's new. First, we're picking up 1,000 tons of flood-damaged items every day. We've got 71 crews out, and it's going to be continuous. Keep doing what you're doing. As you progress, just put it out on the curb. Nobody's going to be ticketed in the flood zones, and I recognize that your son or your grandson might come over for a couple hours, move some of it out, and maybe come back a couple of days later. I'm hearing these kinds of stories over and over. That's okay. Get it out of the basements, put it on the curb on an ongoing basis, and we are just going to keep circling through. Ron Brundage and the DPW team are just doing an amazing job. And for all of the neighbors who have taken the time to go out and thank our DPW crews, they are so appreciative. They tell me there has never been so much positive interaction with residents. And I was with one lady who the rest of her block had been picked up, and there was a huge pile in front of her house. And I said, "Are you mad at them?" She says, "No, they got to my house, the truck was filled up, but I gave the driver a bottle of water, and he promised to come back and do me next." And that's the kind of service and the kind of reaction we expect from Detroiters. If you've still got standing water in your basement, Call the number. Gary Brown has just expanded his team from 60 to 80 to speed up how fast we're getting through every one of these. There's no reason there should be water in your basement. In fact, for most people, it was cleared out within 12 hours of the storm. That means something else is going wrong. We need to get in there and find out what it is. Otherwise, you are at risk if we get another rainstorm right now, and none of us wants that. Gary Brown is expanding those teams. They will get in faster and faster. But please let us know if the water's in the basement. If you still need help with the debris, I think we got, at this point, several hundred that are on the list, and we are out there now. But if you're not on the list, you're elderly, you're disabled, you don't have the ability to move the stuff out of the basement, call the number. All across the city, we've seen neighbors pitching into neighbors, and that's been great. But we got 50 full-time staff and 200 volunteers. Right now, we're getting 30 or 40 basements done a day, but we need to pick up that pace. We're going to be adding 12 more teams from private contractors. Boise Jackson, our procurement director, had a great idea. He's calling the moving companies. And they're used to moving heavy stuff all the time. And we're entering into contracts with moving companies to add them to the volunteers and the city employees. And we are going to speed up the moving of the debris. And of course, if you're able, help your neighbors. Because we still have several hundred people in this city that have got debris in their basement. You can't begin to clean and sanitize anything until you get those items out of there. And so right now, we're going to push really hard over the next 2 weeks to get every basement in this city cleared out. That's what we have been doing. Let's talk about what's next. Once you get the debris out of the basement, we have got to clean and sanitize these basements. We got to dry them out or mold will set in. And so that has to be our focus. How do we clean and sanitize the basements? If you've got the ability, do it now. If you've got insurance, you should have already filed an insurance claim. If you are able to hire a company to come out and do it, hire the company. FEMA just writes you a reimbursement check. So even if we succeed with FEMA, there's no reason to wait. We need everybody to move as quickly as you can. So if you've got the financial ability to hire somebody, get it clean now, get that done, keep your receipts, take your pictures, but you should not let that sit. Landlords, you have an obligation right now. The law and the city code requires you to operate your houses, to keep your house in a condition that's safe and healthy. And so landlords, you are responsible today. If we get a presidential declaration, there's a good chance you'll get reimbursed, but whether you do or you do not, you need to be responsible for the tenant's condition. So let me talk for a minute about landlords and renters and how this whole response affects each of them. So landlords are required, under code right now, to remove debris to the curb, clean and sanitize the flood-damaged areas, and you got to make sure the hot water heater and the furnace are working. I've talked to a number of people whose hot water heaters are out. The furnaces are not quite as pressing an issue, but they will be before too long. As a landlord, those things have to be in working order. You have a responsibility to do that. Starting July 20th, we're going to give you another week. You should have been doing this already. But starting July 20th, we're going to start inspections, and we're going to start fining and ticketing people $250 a day for landlords that are not responding. So that's not going to get you out of the legal obligation to do it. It's just going to put $250 a day fines on top of it. And so I'm saying nobody wants to ticket you. Please take this seriously. Deal with your properties right now. I'm working really hard to get the presidential declaration so you'll be reimbursed. I can't promise you that until we get it, but I'm trying to get you reimbursed. Whether you get reimbursed or not, you have a responsibility to keep your property safe. If we get FEMA reimbursement, here's how it works with landlords and tenants. If you're the landlord, you potentially can get your check back for your cleanup and repair costs. If you're the tenant, the renter, you can be reimbursed for your lost property. So if you had your stereo in the basement, you could potentially be reimbursed the cost of that stereo. The landlord will be reimbursed the cost of the cleanup. So renters are going to be eligible too if we can get this done. but that will be for their properties, which is again why it's so important for renters and everyone to take pictures of everything that you throw out. FEMA is going to come and knock on your door, and when they do, these pictures are going to be really important. Then we've got another group, and these are our most vulnerable. We have about 11,000 homeowners in this city who have a poverty tax exemption. What that means is they own their house, but their income is so low they don't pay property taxes. Usually they make $20,000 a year or less. These folks don't have a landlord, they got to do it themselves. And we know what's going to happen if we let the regular market take effect for contractors. The folks in Grosse Pointe, in Dearborn, and Ann Arbor, I am really concerned they're going to tie up all the contractors, and we're going to see our poorest homeowners waiting a year and a half before anybody gets to them. And so Gary Brown came and said, I'd like to turn this upside down. I would like to take our poorest and most vulnerable homeowners in the city, he said, and I want to line up the contractors, and I want to send them in first. So the poorest families in this region get their basements cleaned first. And so this is what we're going to do. City crews are going to start going in to houses with homeowners who have a city poverty tax exemption. You know who you are. It's about 11,000 families. It's called HPTAP. And you not just have a poverty tax exemption, you're over 65, or you're disabled, or you have a household with children 10 years and under. We want to get these houses cleaned and sanitized at the earliest possible date. And so if you have one of those exemptions and you fall in these categories, we are going to make you first in line, not waiting for the suburbs to go ahead of you. So those who have it, HPTAP, you know what it looks like. If you filed this in the last year or two, there's a good chance you are still under that exemption this year. Everybody who had it last year got extended. So if you prove that you were of low income and you got this exemption from your property taxes, then you are eligible. We think about 800 to 1,000 households that have the poverty exemption with seniors, disabled, or children under 10 are going to need our help. That number might turn out to be higher or lower, but we're going to be ready to send contractors in very quickly, and for the first time, our most vulnerable are going to get help first. This is the way a city should operate. So, what's the basement cleaning and sanitizing process like for those families who have the poverty exemption? Call the number, 267-8000, and we'll look you up immediately. You've got your exemption. We know how old your folks are. You may have to tell us if you have children of a younger age. We may not have that on record, but call the number and get yourself registered. Within 48 hours, we're going to come out and inspect the place and see what the situation is so we can do it. And then Gary Brown and the team will hire a contractor, do an estimate, and the homeowner is going to sign off on the work. We're not just going to go in and do the work. You're going to sign off on what's done to make sure whatever drywall may have the potential to be moldy, whatever needs to be done, you will get fixed. But this is to make your house safe. It's not to rebuild the basement. And so what the city team will do is remove the debris, the damaged drywall, the tiles, clean, sanitize, and dry. When they leave, your house will be fully safe from a health standpoint. As far as if you need new paneling, you need new tiles, and the like, that is probably something that's going to have to wait for FEMA. But we want to make sure your house is healthy and safe at the earliest possible date. So if you call this number, if you currently have a poverty exemption and you're elderly, disabled, or have a small child, the city of Detroit is going to come out and start the work there. And this isn't going to be easy. It's going to take us 2 months to get through 800 or 1,000 homes. It's not like you go in and out in a half an hour. These are major jobs. But my guess is you're going to see for the next 12 or 18 months, people are going to be doing work in houses in southeastern Michigan, and we're trying to get our poorest folks taken care of first. Now, federal disaster relief. This is really going to determine what our response is like. And I can tell you that everybody at the state and the city are fighting right now for quick approval. We need a presidential declaration of a major disaster and the approval for individual residents, homeowners, renters to get relief. So let me just take you through the process, because this isn't a given. We have to earn this. So I met with the president on Saturday. It was a great conversation. I reminded him that in 2014, President Obama gave us a disaster declaration 5 weeks after the flood. President Biden told me if we get our homework done and get it in quickly, he will beat that record. He is quite committed to giving us the approval at the earliest possible date. But understand, President Biden has to follow the law. They have to make a finding. He can't give it to us because he's my friend or he likes the city of Detroit. This is a very rigorous process to prove it was a natural disaster. When you hear people out there saying, oh, this was just another storm, oh, a pump was down for 2 hours. If that were the case, we don't have a chance. But what we are showing is that the 6-inch rainstorm in 24 hours was the largest one-day rainstorm in southeastern Michigan history, and the damage is the most severe. That's the case we're making. If we make it well, we should be able to succeed. So as I said before, 20 FEMA assessment staff are in the neighborhoods today. The governor cannot file the request for a disaster declaration until FEMA has walked the neighborhoods. And the president got them out right away. They've been terrific. The governor tells me she thinks she's going to have the application in for Wayne and Washtenaw County. This isn't just Detroit. She's got to get the applications in for Wayne and Washtenaw. They're in Dearborn, they're in Dearborn Heights, they're in Grosse Pointe, they're in a whole lot of communities. It's a ton of work to do. But she believes that we're going to make that case and have it into the feds in the early part of next week. Then FEMA does a federal review, and they determine whether our documentation is sufficient. And if it is, they send it on to the president. If you haven't already, fill out your Detroit claim form at our website. You're still going to have to do one when FEMA gets here, but we will have all the information in one place so that if we do get the declaration, we can help you get filed as quickly as possible and get you a check as quickly as possible. And that's going to be what we're trying to do, is if we get this declaration of disaster area, we're trying to get money in your pockets as quickly as we can. And I'll say this 100 times, and everybody who was here in 2014 knows this. Take pictures of everything you take out of your basement and keep them. Keep the receipts for cleaning. Those will be the two biggest things that FEMA will be looking for, in addition to showing that you live in the house. Those will be what FEMA is looking for when they get here. And please, claim forms are for Detroit residents only. If you live in Grosse Pointe, if you live in Dearborn, if you live in Ypsilanti, you've got to go to your own community. This is the city of Detroit tracking this process for our residents. So we were kind of flooded with claim forms from other cities, and we just aren't in a position to handle those. If the president declares a major disaster and commits to reimbursement for individuals, here's what's going to happen. The FEMA staff will come into southeastern Michigan, and they will set up here. They will live here. The last time they set up their emergency center out of Martin Luther King High School on the east side. We're already talking to FEMA staff about where the command centers will be. FEMA will go out and inspect each house, but the city of Detroit will help get them to the right areas, clear up who lives in the houses, and the like. So we are already preparing with FEMA how we're going to hit the ground running together if the president declares a disaster area. But I keep saying this, your check might not come for a month, 2 months, 3 months, even if everything goes well. It's a reimbursement check. They don't come in and clean your house for you. If you have the means, clean up now, keep the receipt, and we're going to fight as hard as we possibly can to get you your checks. And so that's what we've done in the last week. With that, I want to turn it over to the person who has just done an absolutely outstanding job. The documentation that they are putting together to give every Detroiter a chance to get reimbursed is just great. So let me turn it over to DWSD Director Gary Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, the number one question that we're getting into our call center is what's next? Folks are saying that we've filed our claim and what's next? And I think the mayor did an outstanding job of answering that question, which is going to take a lot of pressure off of our call center. So thank you very much. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank the men and women at DWSD, along with all the other city agencies that have volunteered to pitch in. This has certainly been a team effort. I've gotten calls from all of our contractors that are saying, what do you need? We'll drop what we're doing and we're coming. So my employees have just come out of COVID. We hadn't been back to work trying to get to a more normal stance for more than 2 weeks, and then they're hit with this. And as you can imagine, through a holiday weekend, they're not able to take off. They're out there doing what we pledged to do. And I can tell you, every utility in America says that they want to be an anchor institution in their community. But certainly the men and women at DWSD show that. They walk that every single day. So I can't thank them enough. Finally, I want to thank the public for their patience. You can imagine trying to set up a call center under an emergency situation, and we've received more than 75,000 calls. I want to thank the public that have been so dreadfully affected by this storm and this flooding that took place, for their patience when they call in. And we ask for continued patience because our call center folks are trying to do the very best that they can, and we're asking them to pivot every day and learn new things that we're putting in place. So I want to thank the call center, but more importantly, the customers that are calling in. Our number one priority right now is public safety. That's the number one priority, along with making sure that the distribution system that DWSD is responsible for, the pipes that service the homes, they deliver water, clean, fresh, quality water. We take sewage away and we clean it and we put it in the river. We're going to get more rain, and we can't get caught with our sewers that are filled with debris. And as you can imagine, with a storm of this size, it pushed a lot of debris, twigs and leaves, garbage into the sewers. And so the night of the storm at 3 a.m., I was calling contractors saying, I need your equipment for the next couple of months. And so I've locked down just about every vacuum truck in the area, and we're out there using those to make sure that we're not only cleaning out the storm drains, but we're cleaning out the sewer lines so that we can build capacity for the next rain and we don't have more damage done to homes. Our workers are also inside of those basements. We've, for the most part, got the street dry. You can see that. There are pockets that there may be under a viaduct or two, a little water, but we've got it dry. And so that's a good thing. We want to make sure we get the basements dry and clean so that our customers are safe. Just a few numbers, 75,000 calls we've taken in so far. I've got, by Monday, we'll have as many as 80 call center folks answering the phones, and we certainly want to thank Quicken and Rocket for stepping in and offering their call center to augment the call center that DWSD has, and they're doing an outstanding job. We've already completed about 3,000 water in basement complaints where our crews have been out to make sure that those sewers are clean and that those basements are now flowing. We've got about 13,000 service requests that have come in. I have almost 100 workers out working between DWSD staff, contractors, the vacuum truck drivers. There are going to be almost 100 workers on the streets trying to do what I just described. So with that said, we're getting prepared for the next storm. We're certainly trying to make darn sure that our residents have clean, safe homes to live in. I won't go back through what the mayor just went over, but that's our priority right now. And we look forward to being able to serve the city of Detroit. Thank you.
When we finish here, we're going to have an announcement on the firefighters' contract, which in normal times would be the biggest news of the week. But I want to take questions on this first, and then we'll bring the fire department up.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Jim Kurtzner with Channel 7. This is for Gary Brown and/or you, Mayor. Mayor, if you'd like to go first. We reported a week ago that the two pump stations over on the east side operated by the Great Lakes Water Authority, not DWSD, had issues. Only 8 to 12 pumps were working. Sue McCormick talked with us about it. She said it was not a failure of those pumping stations, but certainly they were compromised by a third of their capacity. Have you established yet now, these many days later, exactly what happened over there and what the ramifications are?
It's something I'm very concerned with, and I think Candace Miller has done a nice job of articulating what needs to be reviewed. And I think the GLEWA leadership needs to be reviewed and their performance judged. As I said before, in the scope of things, I doubt that it was a major contributor, but the fact is, we're paying a lot of money for these 6 pump stations, and we expect them to work. We're gonna be vigorous about that, but I think we're gonna let the evidence come in unless Gary has more evidence than I do.
Mr. Mayor, for more than half my life, I've done investigations, and the one thing that I've learned is we need to see the data. We need to see the interviews that are going to be done. The board has asked for an independent engineering firm to do the investigation. That's going to start very shortly. So I just want to say I'm going to wait until the evidence comes in before I speculate as to how much the pumps being down exacerbated the damage in the Jefferson-Chalmer area. So,
Has an engineering firm been selected?
not to my knowledge.
Okay. Is that voted on by the board? You're on the board, right?
It will be a board decision, so it hasn't been done. There's a meeting being scheduled to get all the board members together in order to, we're going to hire a law firm to select the engineering firm so that the Great Lakes Water Authority staff has nothing to do that could compromise the investigation or the integrity of it.
And you're on that board, right?
I am, yes.
Okay. Another question on a somewhat related topic. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned last weekend, after meeting with the president up in Traverse City, that you had floated the idea of the city fronting money to low-income residents who can't afford to do their own cleanup. After meeting with the president, realizing that there is some lag time with FEMA money, is that still a plan? I'm not going to necessarily hold you to that.
That's what I started to roll out today, is that the city is going to move in immediately for the homeowners who have a poverty exemption, are over 65, disabled, have children under the age of 10. The president liked the idea a lot. Whether FEMA does or doesn't reimburse this is a subject of debate between the FEMA lawyers and me right now. But at the moment, we don't really care. Gary Brown's teams are going to go in and take care of our most vulnerable families, and I'll fight out the reimbursement with FEMA later.
And just to clarify, you had 2 different sets of figures. You said there are 11,000 who qualify for the city poverty tax exemption, but then you said 800 to 1,000 homes.
So that's citywide. We had the high elevations in the city did not have issues. They're concentrated very heavily on the far western and the far eastern side. So we are thinking, and it may be 500, maybe 1,500, we don't know until people call in. But the great majority of people did not have a flooding problem.
Okay. I was over on the east side. I showed Gary some pictures before this started. They still have a lot of trash that's out on the curb, debris, if you will, stuff that was in their basement ruined. It's been out there, they're saying, almost 2 weeks. It's right over in the townhouses off of East Jefferson and Piper, between East Jefferson and the river. It's the rather upscale townhouses. I can tell you the name of it in just a second.
You're talking about north of...
Heritage Townhouses.
Is that north of East Jefferson or south?
It's Jefferson, Piper runs south toward the
Okay.
river.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I've seen the trucks up and down those streets. They've gone through Jefferson Chalmers 4 or 5 times. So I can't tell you about a particular address, but I've been down there where the DPW group had taken all of it, and then I went through 24 hours later, and you never would have known anybody was there. So if there was an individual one that wasn't picked up, that would surprise me. Maybe Ron Brundage can answer it, but they've been through Jefferson Chalmers multiple times.
Okay, well, my question was, I was talking with those people, and they have 2 city blocks, I know you can't see it from there, but 2 city blocks where it's all the debris from their front porch out to the curb. And one resident said, I'd like to be able to move more out there, but I have no place to put it. So all
this
they're
is
asking is,
Piper between what and what?
it's Piper running toward the river south from Jefferson.
Okay, here, Gary, you take the next question. I'm
I'm the one that usually gets those calls, but. Are there any other questions? Or- And so if there are no other media questions, I guess we could have the, I don't know, is it police and fire? I see both. They can work their way up.
Go ahead. Any other? Okay, we're responding to Piper right now. Jim, I'm sure you're going to see it before the end of the day, so
Okay,
thank you.
I'm just the
for that.
messenger here.
We're going to take care of it.
All right.
Any other questions? Is that it?
I do have one more, just, and then
okay.
I'm done. I asked you this last week. So how would you assess percentage-wise how far along you are overall on cleanup in the city?
You know, I think we've gotten most of the debris that's on the curb out, but as far as the water in the basements, we aren't halfway through it. As far as seniors and disabled, getting debris out of the basements, we are not halfway through it yet. But we're adding more capacity all the time. If we get a presidential declaration, everything will start to move fast, because then everybody's going to know for sure they get paid. The conversation with the contractors get a lot easier. And the other thing is, all over the city, I'm in a neighborhood where people didn't tell me about their neighbors pitching in and helping. And I don't downplay the importance of what neighbors have done. But this is going to be a process that's going to last months. This is huge. The amount of work, I mean, Gary can talk about what it's like going into one of those basements, but we got crews that could take hours just to clean everything out of some of these basements. That's before you even start the cleaning. This is a major event, and it's going to take months of coordinated, intense effort to restore everything. And then at 4:30 today, I meet with Michael Reagan, the head of the EPA, who's coming here, and we're going to talk about what we do in the future to modify the system so that this doesn't happen again. So this is one of the benefits of having President Biden in the White House. FEMA comes in the morning and the EPA comes in the afternoon. I feel like they've been really supportive. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Gary. And let's bring up the men and women of the Detroit Fire Department. All right. Okay, this is a day that some folks thought might have been a long time coming, and I give enormous credit to Hakeem Berry, who led the negotiations on our side, but Commissioner Jones and Thomas Gayhart and his executive team from the Detroit Firefighters Union did a great job. And you see a lot of cities in this country where the mayor and the unions are fighting with each other, they're suing each other, they're in arbitration with each other, and certainly the Detroit firefighters had a right to go to arbitration. But if you look at what's happened in this city, the Detroit Fire Department has had a huge part of our recovery. When I started here, it was 30 minutes when you dialed 911 before an ambulance has shown up. What you have seen is really a remarkable transformation. You have firefighters who have since become cross-trained as medical first responders. The EMTs have done a great job. The EMTs have since formally joined the Firefighters Union, so they're a single union, and they are now operating to national standards, and all during COVID. You never heard the fire department complain. They were under enormous stress. They delivered for this city, and they know the financial pressures we're under long-term. They know they can't get the kind of contract that they might be able to get in one of the wealthier suburbs, but they wanted to take care of their members. They wanted them to get a reasonable work week, and I'm really pleased that we now have a contract approved through 2026. I'm not sure how many firefighters unions in this country are secure through 2026, but I suspect not very many. So the union has ratified the contract. We are submitting it now to City Council for approval. I certainly hope City Council will approve it before the end of July, so we can get these very deserving men and women the pay raises that they're entitled to. And with that, let me turn it over to the outstanding president of DFFA, Tom Gayhart. Tom?
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to thank a few people, and first of all, it's the responders. The men and women, the 1,200 men and women that are out there responding to all these medical emergencies, all the fires, and anything else that might come up. Those are the men and women that we go into these negotiations and we fight for. They make it easy for us to do that, and I hope, and as we had our vote, we've seen that through a landslide, they liked what they saw, and we're going to put some more money in their pockets and keep them going. Second, I'd like to thank the mayor for all his help in getting us through this process. And then thirdly, the Commissioner Eric Jones and his team for working with us, Hakeem Berry, getting us through this process and getting a ratification vote and getting some money in the men and women's pockets that got us through these hard times this last year and are going to continue moving this department forward. So thank you, and at this time I'd like to bring up Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, President Gayhart. You were a wonderful partner. I know sometimes during the investigation, the negotiations, it got a little difficult, but every night we had a conversation and we brought ourselves back to center. There is no doubt that this contract is going to positively change the arc of this department. We're going to improve pre-hospital care for the citizens of Detroit, and we're going to improve the working conditions for our firefighters and medics. I want to thank Mayor Duggan. We greatly appreciate you allowing us to take a year to do this, but it was well worth it. I want to thank Hakeem. You've seen him navigate the testing for COVID, the vaccinations for COVID. He's a logistical guru, but he also sat in the room and he kept all of us calm because we knew what the greater goal was. And the greater goal was to make life better for the citizens and the firefighters. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my team because they worked tirelessly in making sure that we got to the end, to the finish line. Deputy Commissioner Reggie Jenkins, he's in charge of labor. Chief Robert Shinsky, he's the chief of department, chief of fire operations. Deputy Commissioner Sims, in charge of training. Deputy Commissioner Robert Distaraff, in charge of fire and EMS. Director Derek Hillman, in charge of special projects. Deputy Chief of Operations James Davis, and Assistant Superintendent Joe Burney. We greatly appreciate everyone that was involved in this process, and you're going to see a difference. We received a grant from the DOJ for $639,000. We're going to buy chest compressors to help our firefighters and medics with CPR. We're going to add advanced life support equipment to our engines. So you're going to see a better product on the street from the Detroit Fire Department, and I'm so proud of everyone involved. Thank you.
You want to introduce your team before we take questions?
Yeah, please. I'd be remiss if I wasn't allowed to mention my team too. Vice President William Harp, Secretary John Cangelosi, and Treasurer Christopher Smith. He couldn't attend with us, but I do want to mention them. Thank you.
All right. And we got any questions? All right, we're good. Thank you all very much.